And when it comes to policing in America, should cops have access to personal family tree forensics? The use of DNA from non-criminal databases like 23andMe and Ancestry.com in the pursuit of criminal cases is raising a lot of questions. Most notably, family tree genetics were used in the 2017 arrest of the accused Golden State Killer. Now, James D'Angelo Jr. is a former cop who terrorized the Sacramento region of California in the 70s and 80s. He's accused of over 50 rapes and at least a dozen murders. He was arrested last April when authorities, using a DNA profile from Ancestry.com, were able to link him to one of the crimes. Now, it's the most high-profile case in this very rising trend. Earlier, I was joined by investigative journalist Ben Swann to discuss this very questionable police practice.
Look, so the bottom line is this. What you have here is a system that's been set up in which essentially you have law enforcement agencies that are using public databases that anybody can enter into, anybody can upload information into, and they're accessing family member profiles of a suspect that they think might be linked to the case, and they're uploading the DNA to those sites. There's a couple of things, though, here that are a little bit questionable. Number one, there's some major questions about how law enforcement does this. See, they can't get you, for instance, if you're being suspected of the crime, to upload your DNA. So what they would do is they would take the DNA sample, they would create a fake profile for it, they would put a fake name to it, they would put it on that system, and then they would try to match to family members to pinpoint who this person is. It's very different than someone consenting to having their DNA taken or even locating that in a criminal database.
Now, obviously, there are some questions about something, I don't know, ethics, Ben? Where are the ethical guidelines here, and should Capitol Hill be taking up a federal policy against this? Because right now we're only seeing it coming out of Maryland and D.C.
That's right. And I think at some point that's going to have to happen. You're going to see, I think, a spike of cases being looked at this way. It's important that people understand this as well, that DNA evidence and DNA is not as conclusive as people think it is, right? So if you watch TV shows like CSI, you think DNA is this absolute foolproof system by which somebody can be located. DNA actually does a better job of proving someone didn't do something than it does proving someone did do something. And it's also important to know this, that you can get a lot of false positives on DNA matches depending on how that DNA evidence is applied and looked at based on the chromosomes and how that works. It's a field that's above me. But I have done a lot of research on this in the past couple of weeks, and one of the things I've found is that there are a number of cases where people are wrongly convicted using DNA evidence because of the way that evidence was handled and the way that it was tested. So this is not a foolproof system by any means. There's also a question about the fact that if you have not uploaded your own DNA and a family member has, are they kind of entrapping you by going and searching those family members' profiles and not yours? Now,
let's talk about that a little further, the deep dive into privacy here, because there are no protections for the consumer. Ancestry.com and 23andMe have come out publicly and said that they do have a policy against sharing your information. The people that buy and spit in the tube, they do not give your information to the police. But like you said, it's kind of a free-for-all if you, the consumer of 23andMe, let's say, you update your own DNA database or into the DNA database. That's a free-for-all from now. But for everybody else, this is a privacy scare. I think, if everybody can use this to locate anybody, what will this do to us as a society if you can just be tracked down by DNA?
Right, and I think this is a bigger question, right, than just a law enforcement question. Right. This is a question of why are people voluntarily taking their DNA and uploading it into a database where anyone has access to it. I told someone the other day that as a news anchor here in Atlanta, we did a sweep story about locating family members. One of our reporters took a test, and then as part of this sweeps piece, we as anchors were supposed to give our DNA, and they were going to find family members, and I refused. I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. And there was a lot of conflict with my boss at the time, and I said, I'm not going to do it because I'm not uploading my DNA voluntarily to a public site where anyone has access to that information. It's also those sites can be hacked, they can be broken into, and we're also learning now that so much DNA can be altered online. And so you have to watch it. There's so many problems here in Manila with how this can ultimately go bad, and yet people just line up and do it because the commercial tells them it's a good idea.
Well, I mean, there's also, obviously it does make sense for people that are searching for their blood relatives. If you're adopted or you want to find out some genetic testing, if you're, at higher risk for cancer, for example. But then, like you said, the risk of being hacked, for people like you and I, people with children, this can cause a concern for safety as well, because it shows location as well.
Yeah, it shows so many things. And by the way, I want to mention one other point. You mentioned about like Ancestry and 23andMe. They say, well, we don't share that information with law enforcement. Well, they don't doesn't mean that they won't. Some of these companies that are now being set up are selling the information to law enforcement agencies. When you upload your DNA to these sites, it is no longer yours. It is now property of those sites. And even if they don't do it today, doesn't mean they won't do it tomorrow. They will find a way to profit from it. That's why they exist.
It's exactly the same way as, goes your photos on Facebook. It's no longer your photos. You upload it to Facebook. It belongs to Mark Zuckerberg and the company now. So, I mean, this is what's happening with our DNA as well. And it's kind of a scary topic to envision the very near future, because regular people like you and I have access. And I think that's something very important that we need to be discussing more as this technology keeps advancing. So as always, keep us filled in. Ben Swann, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, Manila.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.